Hey y'all, it's me. It's your girl, the real deal, and you already know. Like, share, and subscribe. What's up, real deal? How y'all doing today? Now, before we get started, it's something that I need for y'all to do. Go ahead on and smash that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead on and subscribe. Now we're going to get into our content. It's on Henry Dinkins. I've been covering all the trials of Henry Dinkins. Now, Henry Dinkins is a man that allegedly kidnapped and allegedly killed his son, sister, allegedly, okay? And this is his trial, okay? Put your reaction over there in the reaction box for me. That's what I call my reaction box. This is the comment box. Let's get it and let's go.
Officer, I'd have you stand and be sworn in once again. You sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do, Your Honor.
Please have a seat.
The interview. And additionally, States Exhibit 150. So I would move to introduce those at this time.
No objection to 74. I do object to 150-2 as hearsay.
I'll overrule the objection. I believe it was the search warrant. Is that correct?
To introduce those exhibits on Friday, so I would move.
Detective Obert, let's go back and let's talk about that time element that you were noticing. When you had driven between mile marker 122 and the location of Posh Farms, driving the normal speed limit, how much time should that have taken?
Mile marker 124 to Posh Farms was 22 minutes and 30 seconds driving the speed limit.
All right, and then when you looked at the video surveillance footage from mile marker 124 with that Impala going out northbound to the point in time that it reached Posh Farms, what was the time frame associated with that?
32 minutes.
And then when you looked at it from Posh Farms with the vehicle traveling back west and then hitting mile marker 124 when it was going back south, what was the time frame there?
37 minutes.
All right. Given that there is a 10-minute and then again a 15-minute time discrepancy, when you had noted that, were you looking at areas just to the north of Highway 30 to try and identify locations where Breasia may be located?
Given those unaccounted for times, looking at a map, there was exits off those two roads that people could take. So from that, I'm trying to deduce how far someone could drive out to a location and back to make up for that unaccounted for time.
Okay, let me take you back to States Exhibit 38. When you were looking at that variable, was it something that you were focused on in July of 2020?
July and August and the months after as well.
All right. Describe then how that directed your course of action.
There was searches that were conducted, one in particular on August 20th of 2020.
Tell us about that search and where it occurred at.
That was at Wendling Quarries, and can I approach to kind of point the general area of that?
Absolutely, if you would. So show us where Highway 30 is located, the juncture of Highway 30 and 61. All right, where is Wendellin's quarry located relative to Highway 61 and the exit ramp onto Highway 30? North? Okay. Turn the microphone so we can hear you. Is it further north on Highway 61?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Wendling Quarries is in that general area,
Is it on the east side or the west side of Highway 61?
west side.
All right. Describe what search was conducted, or the nature of the search that was conducted of that quarry back in August.
It was along the road that it shares with. It was about a mile stretch. Detectives were on both sides of it. It was heavily wooded in that area. Detectives walked down about a mile stretch and looked for anything of evidentiary value.
And was there anything of evidentiary value found?
No.
And then when her remains were discovered on March 22nd of 2021, what would have been the additional distance from that location that you had checked to where her remains were found?
The distance between the two are a couple miles.
All right, go ahead and take your seat. Detective Obert, were you aware of Sergeant Pfeiffer and Detective Hammes ever having driven DL out to the area of Highway 61 and Highway 30?
Yes.
Okay. Relative to that drive, were you given any information about the child and directions that he wanted them to proceed? And if you don't know, that's fine. We can talk with Sergeant Pfeiffer and Detective Hammes about that.
One thing that was mentioned from them to me after the drive was done, notably from Detective Hammes told me this, is that when they were north on 61 and took the exit to go on Highway 30, TL told them no, to keep going, as in to keep going north.
All right. Now let's talk about March 22nd of 2021. Were you notified that three fishermen had recovered skeletal remains?
That is correct.
Okay, set the stage for that and explain.
The time was at approximately 6:30 p.m. I received a phone call from Sergeant Pfeiffer advising that remains were found in Clinton County near DeWitt, and that he was responding to go look at the remains in the belief that it could possibly be Breasia Terrell. I then made the decision to also go up there. Sergeant Pfeiffer sent me a ping location, which was just south of Kunal Implement.
Okay, describe the scene when you got up to that area.
It was dark by the time I got there. I was able to go from a distance, observe the skeletal remains. And there was a flip-flop that was near the remains as well, and then also some hair.
Okay. Was there something about the flip-flop that was of import to you?
Yes, it was blue and white in color, which was similar to what Aisha described as a possibility of Breasia wearing.
Okay. And relative to the hair that was located in the area of the skeletal remains, was there something that you noted about the hair that was of import to you?
There was seashells in them. Again, another description provided by Aisha.
Okay, all right. Now, were you one of the individuals involved in maintaining the control of that site until the next morning when law enforcement officers and individuals from the State Medical Examiner's Office and the DCI responded out there?
My responsibility was to leave there and go interview the three fishermen that located her. Scene security was discussed and handled by Sergeant Pfeiffer.
Okay. Who were the three fishermen that you interviewed?
Jesse Dow, Brendan Rogge, and Eric Johnson.
Could you spell Dow spell Jesse Dow so that we've got a correct spelling?
Jesse. Dow is Dau.
All right. And then Brendan Rogge so that we've got a correct spelling?
Brend. I don't know if it's AN or O, and
Okay,
I have to refer to my records.
Okay.
And then last name is Rogge, that's Rogge.
And then Eric, how does he spell his first name?
ERIC.
When did you conduct the interviews of the three fishermen?
shortly after responding up to the remains on March 22nd, 2021.
And then following your interviews of those subjects, describe your involvement at the site on March 23rd.
On March 23rd, we responded to the site where we had a mobile command center up and then also caution tape up of an inner perimeter and an outer perimeter. And then my responsibilities throughout that day was to assist the anthropologist and her staff on clearing debris away from Reja's remains. And then they would help us determine what's of significance in regards to her remains and what wasn't.
Certainly. And then were you involved in any additional investigation on April 3rd of 2021 relative to the pond where her remains were located?
Yes.
Explain.
We had Big River Rescue Search Team respond out to that pond, and they conducted a search of it. During that search, a firearm was retrieved from the pond.
What type of firearm?
A revolver.
Okay.
38 caliber.
A 38 caliber revolver. When Breage's remains were discovered on March 22nd, and then we had the processing of the scene on March 23rd, did officers search that area for any type of casings?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about the different types of handguns. Describe the two different types of handguns.
Semi-automatic and revolver or wheel gun.
Sure. If a semi-automatic is utilized, what happens at the point that the gun is fired?
Shell casing ejects from the chamber.
Okay. When her remains were recovered, were there projectiles located in the area of her remains?
There was.
Okay. By virtue of that, was the area searched for any type of casings?
Yes.
Were there any casings found?
No.
When the gun was recovered from the pond, what type of gun was it again?
Revolver.
And so then did that make sense that there were no casings found?
That would match. That'd be indicative of what we found at the scene, yes.
Okay. And when a revolver is fired, what happens?
The shell casing remains in the wheel of the gun and has to be purposefully manipulated and dumped out in order to remove the shell casings.
Did this conclude your involvement in this matter?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Freeze, it would appear that it would be best to conduct your cross-examination after lunch.
Sure, thank you.
Adjournment until 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And he's sitting right there, knowing what's going on. He knows exactly what's going on. Look at him trying to run out of here. Man, it's himself. They took a little break, y'all. Henry just, Henry getting to me, y'all. I'm trying to control it. That Henry a mess.
And finally, State's Exhibit 66.
The black head wrap that the defendant was wearing when I interviewed him.
Okay. Were those items seized from him on July 10th of 2020?
They were.
Okay. And then after having seized those items, were they placed in evidence at the Davenport Police Department?
That is correct.
Okay. Relative to the placement of those items in evidence, were they ever removed and sent off for any type of analysis at any laboratories?
They were sent to the FBI lab for analysis.
And then once that analysis was concluded, were they sent back to the Davenport Police Department?
They were. I picked them up from the field office over in Moline.
Okay. Were they placed back into our permanent evidence vault?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibits 63, 64, 65, and 66 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Those exhibits will be admitted.
The one I'm interested in is State's Exhibit 65, the shirt. Could you please pull that item out of the evidence bag?
Should I wear gloves?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
He said, can I get some gloves, please?
And excuse me, is that 65 or 64 for the record?
60, let me just double check. It's going to be, I'm interested in State's Exhibit 64.
64 t-shirt.
Could you hold that item up so that we can see what it looks like?
Ooh, that's that shirt Henry had on.
Relative to that shirt, what color is it?
White.
Does it indicate the size?
It does.
What is the size?
4XL.
And you were out at the scene where Briage's ripped those skeletal remains?
There was.
Did that include a white T-shirt?
Yes.
What was the size of that T-shirt?
4XL.
Okay, looking at the T-shirt, first of all, at the front, do you note any type of dirt? I mean, just of any sort?
He changed clothes, shirt. He changed.
Nothing blatantly obvious.
Okay, and then at the back of the shirt, is there anything that you notice?
Just appears some sort of stain up on what would be the right shoulder area.
Okay, all right, I have no further questions relative to that. Go ahead and package it back up.
Hang on to that shirt.
Okay,
Detective Obert, with that shirt, again, inspect it for me if you would. Looks like a fairly clean shirt, would you agree?
Yeah.
It's worn, but it's for a white T-shirt that's like an undershirt. It's fairly clean, correct?
Yes.
You don't see any grass stains on it, do you?
He changed
No.
shirt.
No tears from perhaps being close to a fence or a bush or something like that, do you?
Look at him. He changed shirt.
There's one little rip on the back left side.
Okay, you can put it back in the bag now. Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I just assumed counsel was taking the witness on voir dire.
Never mind. I'm sorry. I thought you were done, Ms. Cunningham.
No, that's okay. Okay. And just based on the observations of what Mr. Dinkins was observed wearing in that quick shop video, is that T-shirt significantly different than the T-shirt that he was observed wearing in the quick shop video?
Quick Shop was a white beer or a white tank top as compared to this T-shirt.
Okay. Now, my final set of questions to you is this. In January of 2021, were you contacted by Clinton County authorities relative to individuals who had information to supply relative to the investigation?
That is correct.
Explain.
Two subjects, well, one initially said that they had information in regards to something they overheard the defendant say, and then as a result of that interview, another subject was mentioned, and then I also interviewed that subject as well.
What are the names of those two individuals?
Matt Dean and David Baker.
Okay. Your Honor, can I have a moment?
You may.
Henry changed shirt twice, y'all. He ain't tricking me.
And did you perform interviews of both of those subjects?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Now I
Mr.
can
Freeze.
go. Now I can go. Detective Obert, I've heard you use this term and other officers use this term, and even the prosecution used this term a number of times. When you say the term wife beater, what are we talking about?
A white tank top.
Why do we call it a wife beater here?
In this certain situation, it's just a common term referred to that article of clothing.
Why?
In my common knowledge experiences, someone that wears that, like,
They call it wife beaters all the time.
if we're going stereotypes, someone that assaults their significant other.
You're not saying that Mr. Dinkins is a wife beater, right?
Correct.
So let's use the word tank top from now on, okay?
Sounds good.
Is that fair?
That is fair.
All right, appreciate it. Talking about the clothing, items 60, exhibits 63 through 66. You sent those off to the FBI lab yourself,
No,
but the decision was made within the Detective Bureau of the Davenport Police Department, correct?
that is correct.
And decisions were made as to what those items should be tested for by the Detective Bureau?
By the FBI analysis team. There's like no formal form I filled out to say it has to be tested for this, that, or the other.
Did anybody at Davenport request that certain items of forensic evidence be tested off those 4 items of clothing?
Yes.
And who would that have been?
It'd been a collective group of Sergeant Pfeiffer and the lieutenants, and then that information was relayed to Cameron Smith and Jim McMillan.
Did you have input into that decision?
Not at that time, no.
Did you provide information to Sergeant Pfeiffer and this group as to what you thought should be tested?
Not at that time.
So the Nike shoes, were impressions ever taken of those shoes, the soles?
Not that I'm aware of.
Were those shoes ever compared to the footprints at Credit Island?
I do not believe so.
The footprints at Credit Island, can you tell me if the footprints were ever analyzed to see if they came from a pair of tennis shoes, first of all?
I do not believe so.
Could they come from a pair of work boots, perhaps?
It is possible. I don't know for certain.
But we don't know, right?
That is correct.
They could come from bedroom slippers, possibly.
You'd have to have like some distinct lines on the bottom of those slippers, I'd say.
Point is that the Davenport Police Department or any other law enforcement agency did not take any footwear impressions of those footprints for comparison purposes, did they?
We took those impressions, but they were not compared to any shoes that we had.
Okay. So Mr. Dinkins gives you a pair of shoes. Those aren't compared, number one, right?
That is correct.
And at this point in time, you don't know what shoes he would have been wearing at Credit Island if he were in fact there, correct?
At what point?
When you're interviewing Mr. Dinkins and he gives you his clothes, right?
That'd be correct.
Because DL never told you he was wearing gold shoes, did he?
That is correct.
You didn't have videos yet, did you?
That is correct.
Were the shoes ever tested for DNA?
I can't say for certain I'd have to go back to the report.
The white T-shirt, that was tested for blood, correct?
That is correct.
And why blood?
In any sort of foreign DNA or anything known at that point was just a general thing that the FBI lab was going to test for, along with other things.
You say foreign DNA. We can get DNA in a lot of different ways, agreed?
Yes.
DNA can come from saliva, correct?
Yes.
Tears, correct?
Potentially, yes.
Y'all, I apologize for the audio. I will be putting my laptop in the shop, okay? The volume needs to be repaired.
Like I can't speak on that.
You can sneeze and leave DNA, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last one?
Sure. You can sneeze and leave DNA.
Potentially, yes.
You can slough DNA off your skin, can't you?
Yes.
But none of that was tested for on that shirt, was it?
I'm not for certain. I'd have to look at that report.
Do you know if that request was even made by the Davenport Police Department?
I do not know that.
In your training and experience as a detective, would that, in your experience, been the best practice to search for all DNA?
To test it for the other things that you just listed?
For all DNA
For
of
all
any
DNA.
sort? Would that be a yes?
I would agree with that, yes.
Especially if you only tested for blood.
What times he left, and Andrea went to sleep between 11 and 11:30, so we don't know the exact time that he would have left.
But you also learned that when Andrea woke around 3 o'clock, she noticed his phone was there, right?
Yes.
And that phone was plugged into the computer, right?
I believe that it was eventually plugged into the charger, yes.
But it was plugged into the computer first, right?
I guess I don't know what you're referring to as the computer.
Well, the tower.
portion. To be charged, or?
Yes.
Okay.
You didn't know that?
I'd have to refer to a report for that.
Did she ever tell you, or did you have knowledge of the fact that she took it off the tower and plugged it into the wall charger to get a charge?
That now sounds somewhat familiar, yes.
Okay. Did you know if there was a phone charger in the Impala?
I know there was a cord inside of the Impala. I can't speak for certain if it was the charging cord or an auxiliary cord. I just remember a white cord that was inside of it.
So if that phone had been dead as late as 3 a.m., it's possible that phone could have been charging a little bit and then dying, charging a little bit and then dying. Wouldn't you agree?
If it's
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He's asking the witness to speculate.
Sustained.
But you have no evidence to the contrary that that phone could have been charging and dying.
while it's sitting, charging into the outlet of the wall
Or in the car.
in the car, I mean, that's a possibility. But I don't know why we would say it's charging and dying if it's not staying plugged in.
But when you look at cell phone records, when somebody is turning the phone off, it says powering off, right?
At the Cellbrite report, that is something you want to see as a manipulation, saying powered on and powered off, yes.
And you don't see powered off on Mr. Dinkins' records, right?
That is correct.
So we have two options. Phone goes dead or someone removes the battery, right?
That is correct.
And you don't have any evidence of either, do you?
His phone was powered on and stayed on the entire course of our interview, so I'd argue that that there's no issue with the power of the cell phone.
At that time. But during the night, you have no evidence of either, do you?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, this interview, there was some discussion about Google Maps and the fact that, again, Henry didn't do something, so therefore he must have inculpated himself in doing something. And the fact that he didn't draw on the maps. Henry some Google Maps, right?
Yes.
And asked him where he went, right?
Yes,
And he showed you on the maps. You point around to places, right?
he did.
He just didn't draw on the maps where he had been, right?
That is correct.
He didn't mislead you, did he?
He just said he was everywhere in the Quad Cities.
Okay. And he kind of was. He was on the southwest side. Then he was over by Anita McQuay's, which is on the other side of town, right?
Yes,
Okay. Then we know he was way up in Clinton, right?
that's correct.
That's way on the north side to get there, right? You have to go north to get to Clinton, correct?
Yes.
So that's the north side of Clinton you got to go to, or north side of Davenport to go to, right?
I wouldn't say Clinton's the north side of Davenport. It's northeast from Davenport, but it's like 30 miles out.
Right. But I mean, you have to go through North Davenport to get there.
Yes,
So he'd been on the north side as well, right?
yes,
You can't go to Clinton by going south, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
So his discussion with you and the Google Maps, is that somewhat suspicious for you too?
Yeah, the fact that he just went, mark up kind of the general areas he was checking. He wanted to be very vague about it, so,
You've interviewed African-American men before, right?
yes.
I mean, are they always cooperative as you want them to be?
It depends on the individuals.
Okay. Let me ask you this. As I understand your working theory of how this little girl met her demise, she was outside the Impala at the apartment at 3:30 p.m., give or take, right?
Yes,
And somehow she got in that Impala, right?
yes,
And then Mr. Dinkins immediately goes to the quick shop, right?
yes,
So you're telling me that Mr. Dinkins abducts this girl, drives immediately to a convenience store that has cameras, right?
I would argue he had her before that 3:33 a.m.
Okay. But we agree that she was, according to Andrew Culberson, out in the car at 3:33.
Yes,
Okay. So we know she's alive at 3:33.
yes,
And at 3:38, they're together then at the quick shop.
yes.
Do we know if she had been restrained in any way at 3:38?
We do not know that.
Do you know where she is in the car?
We do not know that.
But he tells you exactly where he goes, and that's the quick shop, right?
Yes,
And that's the truth, because you corroborate that, right?
that is correct.
So he tells you where he goes with the victim of this offense, and you can corroborate that by video evidence, right?
That is correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but everywhere you go these days, there's big signs that says video surveillance in use, right?
Yes,
And Mr. Dinkins is, from the theory I'm working with here with you, is a fairly smart man, right? To pull this off, he's got to be somewhat average intelligence. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't know about that
Okay.
statement.
So it's your theory that he took this child who he abducted and right to a place where you could retrieve video surveillance, right?
Yes,
And then he drove from Quick Shop straight to the area of Kunow Implement where she met her demise.
yes.
And according to Google Maps, that takes about 30 to 35 minutes, right?
22 minutes
22 minutes from,
from the quick shop to.
Okay, y'all, I stopped it right there. I just want to tell y'all that I got to go get my sound. I apologize for that, but the speaker's getting worse and worse. So I'm gonna take it up there tomorrow morning. Now, when I get out from work tomorrow evening, and see how much they charge me to clean my speaker. And that was day 8, Henry Dinkins Drive. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I'm out.